This here is one way you could have programmed your branch statement. Okay, there are many ways you could have programmed this, but I feel that this is the best way. And so let me go over a couple of the ways that you could have done it. You could have said if random number equals 0, print out yes. If random number is equal to 1, print out no. If random number is equal to 3, then print out maybe. Okay. And what the difference is with this branch and this branch is that this is one branch statement, and it's going to do only one of these prints. It's either going to print yes or no or maybe, right? Because that's the way that if-else works. If this is true, it's going to execute line 13 and then skip to the end of the branch. If this is false, it's going to go down to 14. And if that's true, it's going to execute 15, then skip to the end of the branch. If both this is not true and this Boolean expression is not true, then it's always going to do the else. And that's right, because with our random number, the only possibilities are 0, 1, and 2. So if it's not 0 and it's not 1, then it's definitely 2. So the only way it's going to go into the else is if the random number was 2. What the difference is with this one is that we have if, so we have 3 separate branches, right? The if signifies the beginning of a new branch statement. So here's one branch statement, here's another branch statement, and here's another branch statement. And the way this works is if this is true, it's going to execute line 20. Then it's going to come to line 21 and check is that true. It's not going to be true. Then it's going to come down to line 23. It's going to check if that's true, and it's not going to be true. Right? So if you think about it, the computer has to do more work when looking at this branch statement than when looking at this branch statement. Because let's go ahead and go over it again. Let's go over an example. Let's say the random number is equal to 0. It's going to come to line 12 and it's going to say, yes, that is true. That's one thing it does. Then it's going to print out, yes, that's 2 things it does. Then it's going to skip to the end of this branch statement. So for the computer to run this branch statement, it had to do 2 things. Check if this is true, do this, and then that's it, right? Because it's going to skip to the end of the branch statement. Let's try that same example here on this branch statement. And so let's pretend random number is equal to 0. It's going to check if that's true. That's one thing it needs to do. It's going to do line 20. That's 2 things it needs to do. Then it's going to go to line 21. It's going to check is that true. That's 3 things it needs to do. Then it goes to line 23 and it needs to check if that's true, and that's 4 things it needs to do before it gets through this this piece of code here. And so since this only requires the computer to do 2 things and this requires the computer to do 4 things, right? This is better. Okay. Another way that we could have put this together is we could have said elif random number is equal to 3. Okay. And so if we go ahead and work through this with the same philosophy, right, we could see that this version here needs to do one less thing than this version here. Okay. And why? Because if it checks if this is true, it's not true. It's not true. It's automatically going to go into the else and do line 17. But in this version here, it's going to check if that's true, then check if that's true, then it needs to check if that's true. Hey, it's true. And then it's going to do line 24. Right? So this check right here on line 23 is an extra calculation the computer needs to make. So since this one is more efficient and requires the computer to do less things, then it's better than this one over here. Okay, so you want to kind of think of that when you're putting together your branch statements is, oh, how can I make it the most efficient that it could possibly be? If if you can use an else, you should. Okay. All right, so we go ahead and got our branch statement put together, and let's go ahead and test it out. You can notice here I put new lines in front of my answers. That's just so that I could space things out correctly. And so I come over here to ask the Magic 8 Ball a question, and I say, will I get a new car this year? I hit enter, and it says no. Okay. You could be a little bit more fancy. You could say the magic 8-ball determines, and you can like print that out, right? So you can kind of get a little bit fancy with your output if you would like. But now what we want to do is we've completed task 1, we've completed task 2, we completed task 3, and now we're on task 4, which is to repeat this block of code here over and over again until the user chooses to stop. So now what we want to do is determine, okay, well, what lines of code do I want to repeat over and over again? Right? So you could see, and you want to say, oh, do I want to ask the user to enter a question over and over again? Yes, I do. Do I want to generate a random number over and over again? Yes, I do. Do I want to branch over and over again? Yes, I do. Okay. So lines 9 to 17 are going to go into our loop. But if we had something like this, like print welcome to the magic 8-ball, and I do new line, then would I want to have line 9 repeat over and over again? I don't think so. Right? Because this is our welcome message when we first start our program. But this is what I want to repeat over and over again, not line 9. Right? I don't want to say welcome every single time they repeat a question, because you don't do that in real life. You don't welcome somebody over and over and over again as they are using a program, or maybe they're in the process of completing some action. So let's go ahead and put this all in a loop. And now you want to think, okay, well, I have 2 kinds of loops I can use. I have for loops, and I also have while loops. Right? So which one do you want to use, a for loop or a while loop? And if you remember, for loops are used when you know exactly how many iterations you want your block of code to run. And while loops are when you don't know how many iterations you want your block of code to run. And what is an iteration? It's when you run the block of code that's inside of a loop. Right? So if we look at this program here, do we know how many times we want it to run? Well, if we look at the sub task here, number 4, we say repeat over and over until the user chooses to stop. So the user could choose to stop after asking the first question, or the user can choose to stop after asking the second question, or maybe the 100th question. Right? So we don't know how many times that we want it to run, so I'm going to use a while loop. And now the question is what's going to be my Boolean expression? What you want to take a look at here is you want a Boolean expression that's going to be true until they say they do not want to continue asking questions. Okay. The way that we're going to set this up is at the bottom of our loop, we're going to ask them if they want to stop. Okay. So let's go ahead and save it in a repeat variable, and let's say repeat raw input. Would you like to ask another question? Okay, so here they're going to say, would you like to ask another question? And I'm going to either say yes or no. Now, if I say no, then repeat's going to equal to no. If I say yes, then repeat is going to be equal to yes. And when it comes back up here, it's going to come to our while loop, and it's going to check. Okay. So what needs to be our Boolean expression? What needs to be asked here to determine if they want to repeat this process or not repeat this process? Well, we need to check the value of repeat. Right? So we're going to say if repeat is equal to yes, then we want to continue. Okay? And we might even want to say or repeat is equal to capital yes. Or another way, not or like that, we say or like that. And another way we can do this is we can even say repeat.lower. Okay, so whether it's a capital yes or a lowercase yes, we're going to change it into all lowercase. And that way is shorter, so that way is better. Okay, repeat.lower equals yes. Alright, now this brings up another problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the program, and you see this? Errors right away. And what's the error? Well, we run our program, and it does line 7, that's fine. It does line 9, that's fine. Then it comes down to line 11, and it tries to evaluate this Boolean expression. And it says, okay, repeat, whatever's in repeat, let's lowercase it. But then the program says, hey, wait a second, there is no repeat. We've never made a repeat variable in our program yet. Okay, do you see a repeat variable being created on line 7, 8, 9, 10? I don't. And that's why it's saying, hey, this is wrong. There is no repeat variable. So what we need to do is create a repeat variable, and we need to set it equal to its first value. And what is the first value that we should set it equal to? Well, should we set it equal to no? Let's try it out. Let's run the program, does that, creates our repeat variable, sets it equal to no, and it says, would you like to, welcome to the Magic 8 Ball, and it enters into the while and checks the Boolean expression. And it will say, is no equal to yes? No, no is not equal to yes. That's not true. So it does not do the body of the while loop. It goes down to line 25 and ends our program. Okay, let's run the program. And you can see that, finished, right? Ended our program without us asking a question. So no, we don't want to set it equal to no. Right? Well, what do we want to set it equal to? Well, the question really is do we want this while loop to iterate? Do we want it to run? And yes, we do want it to run. Right? Well, then we need to set repeat equal to a value that is going to make this Boolean expression equal true the first time the while loop runs. Right? Once the while loop starts running, then whether or not this is true or not is based on line 24. Okay? But the first time the while loop tries to run, it's based on what you set it equal to on line number 9. So I'm going to go ahead and set it equal to yes, so that this Boolean expression is equal to true. It's going to say, hey, is yes equal to yes? Yes, it is. So it's going to start the while loop. Then it's going to keep going until I type in no down here. So let's go ahead and try this out. Will I get a new car this year? Yes. Would you like to answer a new question? I'm going to go ahead and put a new line here. Would you like, and I'm going to type in, yes, I would. Ask the Magic 8 Ball a question. Will I find a, maybe I could say not fine. Will I go to SeaWorld this year? No. Okay. Would you like to ask another question? And I want to say no, I don't want to ask another question, and hit enter. And it ends. Right? So this is our Magic 8 Ball program. And you can see here what we did is we broke down the program into smaller steps, and then we solved each step one at a time. Okay. So let's go ahead and end this video here, and we can move on to the next task.